Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. My name is Carly. I'm going to be the moderator again for today. If you're watching with us live, welcome, and we encourage you to participate by sending any questions and comments you have in our live chat down below. And if you're watching with us after hours, again, welcome, and we still encourage you to participate by emailing any feedback you have to info@majestictheater.com. And lastly, if programming like this is something that you value, then we would love to see you go over to majestictheater.com and send us a donation. But I think I've talked enough, so I would love to welcome Zoya and Danny.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Zoya. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Another episode of Behind the Curtain at the Majestic. And let's see, quickly, my guest next week, I just want to preview that a little bit, is our friend Sue DeJura will be here with us. And right now, say hi to my friend Zoya Kachadurian from New York, from her living room or dining room in New York.
Living room, yes. Good to see you, Danny. I wish we could have dinner the way we usually do and enjoy each other's company. But
yeah, I know.
I'm glad
that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm glad for these. They've been a great way to stay in touch.
So let's see. Let's just jump right into this. Okay, so Zoya, how did you come to directing? I know you have like a lot of stage management background as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I studied directing in college. I applied to journalism schools, actually. And then because I loved theater, I did it in high school. My parents took me to theater. My first Broadway show I saw when I was 14, Oliver, lovely musical. And I wanted to, I was torn between the two. I was also like running around trying to interview people when I was 14. So I thought I would go to Syracuse because at the time, I don't know if they still do, you could do a dual major because the theater was a department, not a school at the time. So I wanted to be a drama critic. And I got to the school when it was in transition. And I ended up dropping the journalism and decided I was willing to pay dues doing theater. So I was a directing major there. And when I ran out of directing classes, I did the acting curriculum. And they had a professional company next door. It was Syracuse Rep. It's now Syracuse Stage. And in fact, we were told that if we went next door and got involved with the professionals, they'd throw us out of school. That's how weird the school was at the time. But I did it anyway and got a mentor who was a director formerly at Syracuse and now a stage manager. She ended up running Portland Stage in Maine, but she was stage managing for a living. And she brought me along and I did summer stock with her and got my equity card. And I was off and running and distracted by production. When I first came to New York, everybody was interested in directors doing new plays. And I had not had that much experience with new plays. I directed my boyfriend's play in college and the scenes I didn't like, I didn't rehearse as much. So that's not exactly how you shape a new play. So when I came to New York, I thought if I could find a place where I would do traditional plays already tested, and then I could measure my craft. And I couldn't find any. So again, I got distracted with production work and went and became the production manager for Playwrights Horizons, which is, you know, one of the preeminent places for playwrights and new work.
Yeah.
So I was there when Wendy Wasserstein and oh boy, now I'm blanking. Who wrote? All right, the names will come.
Yeah.
But it was a very heady time. Ted Talley, who wrote Silence of the Lambs, was writing plays at the time. So I got to see a lot of new works being shaped and became more comfortable with it. And now the degree to which I'm comfortable doing new plays is one play that I directed in Massachusetts, but not with you, Georgia and Me, about George O'Keeffe. It's a solo show written by Sarah Ford. I have dramaturg director credit because we have reshaped the play, I would say 200%. There's very little, and it's been a wonderful relationship working with a playwright performer, and we're still shaping it. So
that Playwrights Horizons, that was what under the helm of Bob Moss,
right, Bob Moss. Andre Bishop was walking in the door around the same time I was, and Bob had no ego. He sent a play to Broadway, and just said, "Return the props when you're done, and give us a credit." He didn't negotiate wheeling and dealing. And when he was ready to leave, he turned over the keys to Andre and said, keep up the good work. So.
And then did he go to Syracuse Stage after that?
He did. Interestingly enough, he ended up at my alma mater, and by then the department and the school, which was hugely changed, it was a conservatory school by then. They were part of Syracuse Stage. I think Arthur Storch ran the two together, and then I think Bob was there, but at that point maybe they were separate again, and then he founded Hangar Theater up in Ithaca. So he's an amazing man, and I wish I had been a director under him instead of a production manager. It would have been fun.
Yeah, so did you have any experience with who was it, Bob Kalfin?
Yes.
That rang a bell, right?
I did my first Broadway show. Bob Kalfin was the director. And it was Strider. It played off Broadway for 6 months, and then we went to Broadway on 2 days, which is not how it's done anymore. But we moved the show in 2 days and opened. And then later he asked me to do The Little Prince and the Aviator, which ended up as a stage manager, the head stage manager. And it ended up, I think, being one of the most famous flops, but by then he wasn't associated with it. We went through 2 directors, 2 choreographers. We fired the child. I mean, it was a nightmare. That was one of my bigger nightmares. Yeah. But as a stage manager, if you're the head stage manager on Broadway, until recently when the British thing came in, you really were putting in the understudies and the replacements. I did a play at Lincoln Center that was a Steppenwolf, the second Steppenwolf play they'd ever done. And I was 2 steps removed from the director and had to put in replacements. So I got on the phone with him and I consulted Joan Allen, who was going to be playing with the actor. And, so I've done directing that way, but I wanted to get back to my own vision, not the craft of directing, which is significant, but the art of directing, where it's your concept or your vision.
So what brought you to the Majestic? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I was looking around for places to work, and I went on your website, and I thought you were going to do Blues in the Night, which was a show that I was the original stage manager on Broadway. So I wrote to you. You actually had already done it. And I was directing a production of Stones in His Pockets at Stoneham and Gloucester Stage, because I had been the AD for the tour. So that was a way of people would give you a chance even though they didn't know you. And John O'Craig saw it.
Oh, yeah.
And so he recommended me to you. And Chuck Muckle had worked there, and he suggested. Now, that's the Stones I did for you, but I did
right
before that. And then Jones, my college, very close college friend, was the head of the Springfield Symphony, and he would meet you at various arts things, and he was a subscriber, I believe, so he knew the theater. So all 3 people either suggested me to you, or said, use my name when you meet him. So that was helpful. And then after we met, I wasn't, I felt like it went pretty well, but you didn't say, I'd like you to work, whatever. You excused yourself, and you came out with this script, and you said, this is a musical, a dramatic musical that I wrote. You want to direct it? So I thought, okay, work for the artistic director who you just met, baby, and you said it was a very personal story for you. So it wasn't like you were writing Guys and Dolls or something, it was and we started a relationship. We did 3 rewrites. We worked together for 6 months on the script alone. We adjusted the timeline and reordered a lot of things. And, first musical, two working motorcycles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was about the Vietnam vets that go to the wall every year.
Right.
And I came up with the postcard. I came up with an idea for the postcard. And then as we were doing it, you had written it a little bit like Shakespeare. The battle happens off stage. So the whole play was these different people meeting up and going to the wall. And
on their way to the wall.
On the way to the wall. And then you had a scene them coming back from the wall. Wasn't that meaningful? Oh, it meant so much to me. And I said, Danny, you got to go to the wall. And you said, well, how would we do it? Which is funny because you understand your theater better than anyone. But because you were also the writer, I think you were, not with your artistic director hat on. And I said, let's do projections. So we did a black wall because that was the only way to do the projections. And
right.
That's the key scene, which
means we had to get a glass gobo, I think, in order for that to work.
Yeah, we had to do something. It became the big job and what you did, instead of writing a scene, you very wisely, you and Mitch Shakur, the music director, and did he write the music?
Yes.
Yes. We took a theme of a song we'd already heard the lyrics to, and it was played in a different way, very melancholy, and it just played on guitar as different people from that we knew their backstory now, each had their moment at the wall. It was a very, very moving scene, and I know the audiences came out talking about it. So,
well, I don't know if I've ever actually told you this, but before I even handed over that big script to you, there's a great picture.
Yeah, look at Frank Aronson before he was his felt self now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great group of guys. Oh my God. Yeah. But so before you handed over the script.
Yeah. So we were chit-chatting out by the box office and somehow I asked, I said, well, where are you from originally? And your comment was, yeah, I'm from Newark. You got a problem with that? That was exactly it.
You loved me from then on.
From then on, I loved you. Yes.
That's my standard line because people kind of go, oh, So I just pull the Sopranos. Yeah. But we, it was a great experience. It was tough. It was really tough. Damn motorcycles. The Indian wouldn't start up from time to time.
Oh yeah, that damn Indian.
Yeah, but it was a great, trial by fire.
So let's see. There's another.
Yeah.
There's another scene. He's that was.
I got my cheat sheet. Hold on. It was. No, where is it? Where is the ride? That was Matt Haas.
Matt Haas, yeah, who was a Vietnam vet who was really kind of still in the woods, as it were, and.
Yeah. And the thing that was interesting, we had to adjust the timeline. And Danny, you've always been very complimentary to me about the amount of research I do. And so we were, really went into, I went to the wall and I read the things they carry and a whole bunch of other wonderful books written by vets. And the only person that had a emotional connection to the war, I believe, was Matt. He had an older brother, significantly older than him, because the high performers, we all knew about the war, but I was of an age where you could have been drafted, but they were younger than me. And so we had to set a timeline of when the play would have happened so that we could cast the appropriate age for the timeline that you had written.
Right.
Yeah.
So what for you? What came after the ride?
Well, a fun experience was King of the Moon. I had done a couple of festivals in New York and met up with a lovely playwright, Wendy Castor, and she kept talking about her brother-in-law who also wrote And when I got the job, I said, yeah, the name of the show, it's King of the Moon or something like that. And she said, King of the Moon, that's my brother-in-law's play. So it was the second part of the trilogy. The first one was Over the Tavern, which was a big hit. This is the amazing set that Greg Trohill did because we needed a tree.
Yep.
It's funny, I've done 2 plays now with trees, Apple Season at NJ Rep too. But we needed a tree, and there's certain things had to happen in the tree, and it was the set had to do a lot of things, and Greg did an excellent job. It was great. And so I did fight choreography for that. 2 women got into a fight, and I got in touch with Tom Dudzik, the playwright, and he came when we had a talk back. And what you did, because it's a trilogy, the same characters 10 years apart, was you brought back the cast from Over the Tavern and my cast. And so they all participated in the talk back as mirror images of each other, different ages rather. So that was a fun experience. And it takes place the night of the moon landing. Right. Or the final scene. And there's Amy Risk down front and Keith Bailey in the back, who played an intellectually disabled person who was like Tom's brother. It was an autobiographical play. Right. And we usually don't meet the actors until first day of rehearsal because Danny casts the season. So my costume designer said to me, the guy playing Georgie is deaf. And I said, no, he's supposed to be intellectually disabled. And she said, no, the actor is deaf. So, these are little surprises on your first day of rehearsal. He was actually, he lost his hearing as a teenager and had a cochlear implant. And he was brilliant. He was a brilliant actor. There he is.
There he is. Keith Bailey.
Yeah.
Before King of the Moon, I had we did a production of Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet.
I would have loved to have seen him.
I cast Keith Bailey as Hamlet.
Yeah.
And we kind of did an interesting thing with our subscribers. It was part of the season and part of the subscription package. And we said to our subscribers, listen, if any of you folks have trouble with Shakespeare, you don't get the language, you have a hard time following the play. I mean, Hamlet's an easy one to follow because it's so perfectly written.
Yeah.
But we'll give you your money back. You have absolutely nothing to lose, and no one ever asked us for our money back. So I was really proud of that. But I was even more proud of Keith, who, as you said, had this cochlear implant, and if you were just meeting him, you probably wouldn't know that he was impaired at all. You might a little bit,
Only in a noisy room he had problems.
Yeah. But we had here in Western Mass, there are 2 kind of schools for the hearing impaired. One is the Willie Ross School, and the other is the Clark School. And both of them have very, very, very different approaches to dealing with the hearing impaired. The Willie Ross School is really all about reading lips and signing, ASL, and the Clark School just looks down on ASL altogether, and they want you to read lips and speak.
It's very, very the deaf world is very, very political. If you were born deaf, you're at a certain level of in the cast of deafness. If you became deaf, if you have parents who are hearing, it's really interesting. I learned that when I learned sign language. It's a very political world, and they're it's like 0.5% of the population. I mean, it's a small segment, but it is, it's about communication. So it's and that came in handy later. But after King of the Moon, I directed the only play I was meh about, which was The Graduate, because the actual play was written I believe it was written after the movie. The book
Oh,
was
sure.
first,
Yeah.
then the movie, and then this Brit wrote.
It was a British adaptation. Yeah.
And it had Britishisms, which one of my actresses, Lisa Robideau, who's English, would catch a few. Like she says to Mrs. Robinson, "Why don't you have a little bit of a lie down?" And my relatives are from England, and I didn't catch that one. That's a very British, have a bit of a lie down. But there were some real challenges to that show. There's Steve Pettit, who was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful as I'm going to my cheat sheet for the rest of the
Benjamin, yeah.
Benjamin. And I had decided that I wanted a bigger spread of age between Mrs. Robinson and Benjamin, because I felt like we were used to May, December, and I wanted it to be a little bit uncomfortable. So we went and we cast Mrs. Robinson a little bit older.
Yeah, we had to go into New York and
and
hold an audition.
And we had Christine Delisle,
who
was lovely. She was a former Breck girl. Do we have that photo that we can see, Carly? The one of her with Benjamin? She's yeah.
Hi, I'll take a look. I'll see what I can find. You guys continue.
I thought it was there with the three that I did. And so we had that. And then this, it moved very cinematically, and that's hard to do. And also the music from the movie was so iconic. You let me get a guy who made graduate-like Simon and Garfunkel-ish kind of music. No, that's Miracle.
Isn't that you're referencing? No.
No, we'll take that away.
I don't know if I have that one then. Yeah.
Oh, do you have the one of the woman behind the screen?
I do have that one.
Yeah. Okay. So at one point, Benjamin takes Elaine. He doesn't want to date her, and he takes her to a strip club. And we made part of the set, which had panels. One panel was translucent, and I had the stripper, rather than being full out with nipple rings and the whole thing from the movie, we saw her dance, and it was as if Elaine was looking at it.
Yeah, there we go.
And so that was very effective, because, I want to be mindful of the audience. And for them, I think that was enough. You can't, when you're in a movie theater, there's things you can do. Nudity on stage can be very uncomfortable for an audience member. So I think it has to be used in the right way, the right size theater. A little wraparound theater is not necessarily the place to have too much nudity, because I think the audience gets uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then I got to do the Miracle Worker, which was the photo that Carly had just put up. And I studied sign language, although Helen Keller did not learn American Sign Language. She had letters spelled into her hand. Did you know that Helen Keller was one of the founders of the American Civil Liberties Union as an adult?
That's pretty interesting. And Annie Sullivan, of course, was originally from Agawam.
Right.
There's right out in Feeding Hills, there's a little park there right near the center of Feeding Hills with a statue of Annie Sullivan.
Yeah. And so that, I think, was one of the, I've done a lot of hard plays. They're either a lot of business or whatever. But the Miracle Worker is very deceptive, because even when you have a scene with the family and Helen is in the bedroom, you've got to keep an eye on her to make sure that she's doing deaf behavior, blind behavior, while you're rehearsing these other people. And when you're noting the show, you kind of want to note the scene where the words are, but you also have to note Helen. And we had a lovely actress. I tried Googling her to see if I could find her and see if she was acting. Brittany and Andrea,
yeah.
A lovely young girl, and
who's I think in college now.
Oh no, I think she's past college.
Maybe
oh,
so.
Yeah, I think she's probably had kids or something with a different last name. But she was very good. Her parents were very trusting. They weren't stage parents, but they knew their daughter wanted to do this, and we did some prep with her of putting her in big noise canceling headphones and completely covering up her eyes, and we drove her around and we walked her in places. We took her to an ice cream place where, you know, she could smell certain things, and then we gave her an ice cream. And when we brought her back to the theater, still without being able to see or hear, as she went upstairs, she started to panic because she has a fear of heights. But she, you know, she knew that I had her, and it helped really inform her performance. And we also had Kate and Sam's daughter. Give me her name.
Yeah, Molly.
Molly
Damon
was
Rush.
one of the deaf, one of the blind kids in the school, and Molly was so dying to perform. I mean, this child had theater coursing through her veins, and she was so lively that I had to sit her downstage and have her face up to the teacher so that she wouldn't steal focus. And
I think she was what, 6 years old or something like that?
Yeah, not much more than that. Yeah. And, you know, she would be looking around at the audience. I'm like, no, you're blind. Sit down and look upstage. But she was burning to do theater even then. So, yeah, that's one of the fight scenes. So I did all the fight choreography in this and on King of the Moon. I mean, in The Miracle Worker, it kind of talks through the phases. And I don't know if, Carly, if you have the Pietas shot. What I don't normally think ahead of how I want something to look, but I knew that there was a point where Helen was a wild animal, and then Gibson says she collapses in her mother's arms. And I just saw a Pietà. That's it.
There it is. Yeah.
And you had cast Marianne Basham. How'd she pronounce it? Basham?
Mariana Basham, yeah.
She, such a lovely actress, and she looks like a Renaissance painting. So I got my moment, and Dan Rist gave me the pool of light, and I just, you know, there's just little moments where you go, yes. And I love that. That was a very exciting.
Yeah, she looks like she's right out of a Vermeer.
Or a Botticelli.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah. So we did that, and then you did a summer season that you wanted something that could play on a bare stage, and you asked me, did I know any plays that didn't really need scenery? And I said, yes.
Well, as a matter of fact.
As a matter of fact, I've directed one. So we did Stones in His Pockets with Buzz Roddy and David Friedlander. And they had each done a production. Buzz had done it, I think, at New Century, and I don't remember where David did it. And I had been with the London company and brought over the guys who were supposed to replace on Broadway. But 9/11, that was the first show to close. So I brought them to America, to the Globe, where they were going to mount the national tour. So I had like I had 4 different productions that I learned, I observed in London: the UK tour, the European tour, the onstage West End, and the understudies who I was bringing over. So I had those 4. Then I directed my own, and now these guys each had. So we had 7 different versions.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful marriage of ideas that I had that they took to, and things that they had that I never thought of. And you have to be, the 2 guys play 13 people, and each of them plays 1 female. And it's not done the way Greater Tuna is. I mean, there are no costume changes. It's all done with a flick. I know my guy in Stoneham did this when he played the woman. He like tugged at his bra strap. And I said, where did you come up with that? He says, oh, my girlfriend does it all the time. So, you know, every time he did that, you knew that he was Ashling, the female AD.
Yeah, yeah.
So did that. And then a nice, easy show, the 39 Steps, which... that
was an adventure.
That was an adventure.
In some respects.
In many respects. I mean, you know, we've talked often about the thrust stage, and it can be wonderful for certain shows. It's a little bit of a nightmare. That's a good shot, isn't it? That's Richard Vaden and Dave Mason.
Dave Mason, yeah.
It helps to have a proscenium because there's big chairs that have to, be pushed off, and it's easier to go in a straight line than around. But we had solved a lot of it, and I was in LA doing a gig for 2 days on the day off, and Greg Trohill, the set designer, calls me, and he said, "Don't tell Danny I called you because I'll get in trouble." But we had to make a change to the set because the fire marshal came in, and we can't put anything, we have to make a new fire door. So the left in one, which was my only straight thing to push this big club chair, it's gone. But don't tell Danny I told you, he's going to make it all work. So I was like, I had a 5-hour plane ride to reblock on paper the changes. I was like, Danny doesn't want me to know in advance.
Yeah, we had like 3 or 4 days to literally cut a hole in the wall and get a new door installed and get a landing and some steps, and so we had to create for you folks who kind of familiar with Majestic now, create that egress door over on the house right side of the theater. And
all of that was because they used or abused that fire exit too much in not Inherit the Wind. I say that every time. Long Day's Journey.
Long Day's Journey.
The screen door in front of it. And when I saw it, I thought, that's kind of blocking the fire exit. And that's what the fire marshal said. So.
Well, it didn't seem to be too unreasonable to me, if we got a little emergency exit, to go through a screen door. What's wrong with that?
Of course, the way I was going to use it was there'd be a big old club chair as you went running to save your life. So we had to do a little restaging, and that was the challenge. Well, we had 2 challenges on that one, but that was one of them. We overcame that one and had to make do with the other.
So from the shows that you directed, do you have any interesting kind of audience comments or feedback? Or
well, when we did Stick Fly, which I do want to talk about a little bit, sure, which was Lydia R. Diamond's play. Lydia R. Diamond is a wonderful African-American writer, and it's about a Brahmin family that has a home on the Cape.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, on Martha's Vineyard. And it deals a lot with class. And they find out that the maid's daughter is actually their half-sister. And at one point, the son says to his father, you had sex with the maid? Even though they were all African-American, there's a strata like the deaf community within that. And I was the first, and I think I'm the only, it'd be interesting to check, I think I'm the only white person that's ever directed that play. It had been recently became available. And what I did when I met with the cast was I said, I'm very much aware that I'm directing a Black play, and these are the themes that I find absolutely speak to me that have happened in my own life, and those are the universal themes. And it was a wonderful experience. At one point, one of my actresses asked a question, and again, I do a lot of research, so I was able to give her the answer she wanted. And LB, the patriarch, was sitting in the chair supposed to be asleep, and he said, well, praise the Lord, a director who does her homework. So I felt in very good shape. But we were worried because it does have an interracial couple. And Sandra Blaney, who you see there, is in a relationship with Jamie Lincoln Smith, who's the guy in blue. Right. And we thought, it was, you've always challenged your audiences, but as the years have gone by, it gets a little softer. And we were both wondering how the audience would take that. And the only feedback that we got that was negative was not unable to relate to this family, not a problem with the interracial, because they were kissing and all over each other on the couch. Didn't have a problem with that. They had a problem with the F word. which was said several times in the play.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Another time I was sitting in the audience for one of my plays, I can't remember which, might have been Miracle Worker, and a patron was sitting next to me, and at the intermission, she said, "Oh, I just think this is wonderful. Are you enjoying it?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she didn't know I was the director, and it was just great to, I said, "Well, what do you like about it?" So I'm like fielding her, and if she noticed the pictures in the front entryway, she would know. But that was kind of nice to be incognito.
All right, here's another question for you. Now, you have to be really careful how you answer this one.
Uh-oh. Who's my favorite playwright?
What do you like about working at the Majestic?
Oh, there's a lot of things. First of all, the team, and I mean front of house, back of house. It's a very loving team, and it's like any family. We all have our quirks, but it comes from a position of love. I do like the intimacy of the space very much. I do most of the time like the 3/4 thrusts, as long as I have a good set designer and I walk around and look at everything. I like that intimacy of that. I really like working there, and the fact that I have not been pigeonholed into one kind of play that I direct. You've let me do a real wide array of things, which I love, because I'm kind of that way as a person. I work in theater, then I do corporate, then I do TV. So I like that. But I'll tell you the things I don't like. That's what I have to be more careful of. Because it is so intimate, I think that the audiences, especially, and this is happening all over the country, but in a small space, the audiences forget that if they turn and talk to the person they came to the theater with, everyone hears it, including the actor.
Yeah.
And if they're eating good and plenty and they keep going like this with the box, or going in for the nuts into the plastic, all of those sounds become part of the show. And I think they're so used to seeing, America is used to seeing TV or film, that they forget that it is a two-sided medium.
Yeah. Well, it's even true for actors and production assistants backstage while the show is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I was trained so strictly backstage that when I work backstage, which has been several decades now, I mean, I'm so aware that it's about the life on stage. But it can, and then for another audience member, if one person is really into the show in a certain way, and then you suddenly hear crinkly, 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 for the audience member, their experience is this, and then there's all this stuff around them. So yeah. that's a concern everywhere. But in a small theater, it's I think it's more of a challenge.
Yeah.
But and I encourage you. I mean, you've always done gutsy choices, and I think your audiences. I thought, he's doing Lacage. I don't know how that's going to go over, and they loved it and they accepted it fully. And I like challenging audiences. I mean, I like plays that make an audience think or connect emotionally. If you see a play about race relations on stage, it makes it like a safe place for you to start thinking about that in your own life. And that's what's beautiful about theater. And it's a shame during this COVID crisis, when we need it so much, that we're not able to sit all together. And when I stage managed all my sons on Broadway, there was a point in the play towards the end that literally I'd look around when I sat out, and the whole audience was leaning in, and they start to breathe in sync, because it's almost like a meditation, that they're concentrating and so caught up with what happens on stage. And that's a lovely goal to have as a director, to try to bring an audience to that collective point.
Mm. Yeah. Well, that kind of leads into, I mean, we've sort of been talking about this anyway, but your approach to directing and the challenges of directing. Yeah.
It's well, my approach is very much from the script. I feel like, particularly with a really good, experienced playwright, and Arthur Miller, there's a reason for every word, and there's a reason for a punctuation. Sometimes the punctuation helps you understand a moment in the play clearer. Sure. So I like to spend a lot of time with the script. If it's a new work, then, as you know, rewriting the script and fine-tuning it. And I like table work because I feel that the more you and being you, the director, and of course the cast, the more that we can all understand the script and get it in our bones, then blocking becomes, usually, unless it's a 39 steps, but a play that's more about the words. Usually the blocking will take care of itself if you understand what the beats are. The other challenge to me for a director is every actor and every director, they're all trained differently. And there's a language that you use. So when I was a stage manager, one of the best directors I worked with was able to kind of speak in tongues. He could go up to each actor and speak in their own language. I aspired to that because you'll have two actors in the scene and how they approach it is totally different. And
totally different, yeah.
You want them to work in the way they know how to work, as long as they can find the commonality and achieve what the play asks. So it's a lot of spinning plates for cast, for director. It's a process.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that very first meet and greet. When you assemble the cast and most of them don't know one another, and as you said, they all have different processes, different ways of working, and
they're nervous.
Different levels of talent, and skills, and you take this whole kind of stew, as it were, and
perfect.
You have to get it ready for an audience in 2 weeks.
Do you remember what I did for Miracle Worker at the meet and greet?
I don't.
I wrote out my thoughts and I signed them. I stood up, and my first, instead of starting to communicate verbally, I signed like a page.
Oh.
And there was sort of they knew what I was doing, but there was like a little bit of a shock and a trying to understand and not knowing, and what does this mean? And there were all these things. And afterwards I said, this is what it's like for a deaf person in a hearing world.
Yeah, you'll remember that.
And I wanted to sort of start with that shakeup, because the only person viscerally experiencing it or trying to create it was going to be the little girl. And I wanted everyone to sort of understand that was the schism plus sight for Helen Keller, and that she achieved what she did is, how anyone could say there's any such thing as handicap, or any race, or any person is less than another. I mean, the proof is right there of what was that you can cross over and figure out that this wet thing is these finger spelling things called water. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. How about, do you recall, I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Well, we talked about the new fire exit.
Yeah.
But any kind of bloopers? Because things always happen during the run of a show, especially if you've got a 6-week run, 7-week run.
They do, and I usually don't hear about them because sometimes a stage manager is afraid to put it in the show report, and I'm not there. But I'm sure there were many bloopers in the 39 steps because it was, such a circus to do. But when we were, I know the production bloopers of The Door, not having an entire area to play in and out of. And when we were doing The Graduate, we had trouble getting a couch. It had to be 60s California, and so finally Danny and the the very young set designer. I think she was just out of college. You took her and you went and you bought a couch and you came in the middle of rehearsal and you came in with this poofy black 1980s, which is still in style. I don't know why, but it is. So in no way was it 60s in California.
Yeah, more like a mid-century thing, right?
And Danny said, yeah, I needed a mid-century. And Danny says, this is your couch. And I was like, no, it isn't. You know, and the whole cast just kind of moved back. And Danny and I were like high noon. And the next day I found one in a thrift shop. And you let me get it. And Teddy of Teddy Bear Pools, Ted Eber, is that his last name?
Yeah, yeah.
He was playing the father, and he sat down, and evidently it had been the home of a cat because he had a huge allergy. We practically had to give him a shot, but we did make the couch finally teddy-proof where he could sit on it without. But he said, "Do you need me to get a couch? Should I talk to Danny? You know, because he's like the main benefactor." And I was like, "No, please don't. I'll never work here again." So those were my personal bloopers, but I'm sure there were many in the show.
Yeah, I don't know how many folks recall who are watching now recall Teddy in that play. I mean, it's actually his first play, and you know when we announced our season and it included The Graduate, he was of course one of our corporate sponsors at that point. And he came up to me and he was just going, "Oh," he said, that's just my favorite movie ever. I just love that play." And, you know, and somehow or another, I got the bright idea to cast him as Benjamin's father, which was kind of a rather minor role.
Small, but important. The first scene I wanted, we had the set on 2 levels, and I wanted him and Mrs. Benjamin. What is Benjamin's last name? I don't even remember the character. Anyway, Benjamin's mother and father, I wanted them to speak out because Benjamin was on the ground level in a wetsuit. He was supposed to be in a pool.
In the pool.
So I wanted to sort of create that effect that was in the movie of them looking over the pool. But I wanted him to speak out to the audience. And that's a hard thing for an actor to do. And he was not an actor. He tried, God bless him. And then when he goes to Benjamin after he finds out that Benjamin's had the affair, he was like, "Should I come in this way or should I come in that way?" And I said, "Just come in really pissed off that he's screwing your best friend's wife." And he was like, "Oh, the beginning of the method." He was
Ted. For those of you who know Ted now, you would hardly believe this, but as a kid growing up, he was a stutterer and kind of very sort of private kid, and not the outgoing teddy bear that we know and love today. You know, him taking on the challenge of doing that part in The Graduate was really was a big deal for him. You know, it was,
and none of this you told me as preparation. Nothing.
Yeah, right.
I knew nothing. Me and Colonel Clink, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Or Sergeant, whatever he was. But the only play we didn't mention, and I don't want to give short shrift, was An Inspector Calls.
Right.
Which is another play about class and the change of the look at that gorgeous set that Greg gave me and the lighting.
Yeah.
Because when it was originally done, and I worked on this on Broadway a little bit, and I had all of Stephen Daldry's notes. Stephen Daldry is an amazing award-winning film and stage director. And when it was first done in London, J.B. Priestley was a socialist, and he had very strong views on the working class and the whole. Things were changing in England. And the first time it was done, it looked like an Agatha Christie thing in a little, living room. And he was furious with it. And he had done it previously. The only place that he could get it done was at the Moscow Theater. And they did it on a bare stage. So Stephen Daldry knew that and wanted to incorporate that. I didn't want to imitate what Stephen had done, but I did like the idea of the open walls and working class peering in, and we accomplished it partially. but it was a very good looking show. Hard show to do because it is very stilted.
Well, it's another class play for sure.
Yes.
And the production that I saw in London, and I think you were somehow involved, maybe not with that production, but with the American production. At the end of the play, the entire set pretty much collapses.
That's Daldry's production. He has this little house on stilts.
Yeah.
The imagery being that it's very tenuous, and in the opening scene they're having this very elaborate dinner party. But it's on a house, and at the end, as a stage manager, you have to call cues that you throw switches and call cues, and things crash and burn, and you have to tell yourself that's okay, because as a stage manager, generally you don't want things to crash and burn on cue. So.
Yeah, right. And it's funny seeing that production in London. I loved the play, and I was kind of committed to doing it at some point at the Majestic. But the set collapsing for me just came off as a gimmick.
Yeah,
I was really disappointed at how it ended.
We also had rain for like a scene.
Yeah.
And but I had seen a previous production before I worked on that. I had seen this one in London that looked like Mousetrap, and it was very. The inspector was very, and I thought it was an intriguing script, but it just felt so stuffy. So when my friend said she was going to be the production stage manager of this, I said, "Oh, that old chestnut?" And she said, "Oh, no." So it was done in a very different way. And that had my first opportunity to work with JT Waite. And we talked yesterday. One of the things, I consider myself a director at the Majestic and a godmother at the Majestic, because I had suggested, hey, JT.
Speaking of, hi, JT.
JT, when you were doing Inherit the Wind, I said to you, "Oh, I've got a perfect actor." So you heard me say Leprechaun before, didn't you, JT? So I thought he'd be perfect for Inherit the Wind, and you met him and thought so, and he was off and running. I think he's done more shows at the Majestic than I have now, because you've got good taste. Audiences love him, and so I was glad of that. And the other two things I did was I suggested I work a little bit at NJ Rep in Long Branch, New Jersey, and I saw a show there that I thought was incredible and thought it would be perfect for you and your audience, and suggested that you bring up the whole production, or at least the same director. And you ended up being able to bring 2 of the 4 cast members and the director, and it was called Butler.
Yeah.
It was a real story, and I thought it was fascinating, and I believe your audiences really loved it.
Well, yeah, and of course there was the Massachusetts connection, the historical connection to General Butler himself.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating. Then it went to New York, and we all went down to, a group of us went down to see the production in New York at 59 East 59th.
Yeah, and that had the original guy playing Butler again.
Yeah, who I was disappointed in. I thought our guy was better. People raved about that actor, and he was good, but
I was watching the show at NJ Rep, and I was halfway through before I realized who the actor was, because I'd seen him in other things, and he was so transformed. And then the other thing I suggested to you, and you met and was met with resistance, was Love, Loss, and What I Wore, because I thought, again, that your audiences would like it. And once in a while, it's nice to do something that you don't have to build a huge set, and every now and then to sit back a little on the production end and be able to produce a show. So
it's funny, Love, Loss, and What I Wore. I saw a production, a little studio theater production of it down in Naples, Florida, with my friend Paul McDonald, who lives down there part-time. He's the guy was very involved in Stage West in the early days, and is a subscriber with us at the Majestic, and really great guy. So I was down there visiting him, and we we went to see this studio production of Love Lost. There's 100 people in this little black box theater, and there are only two men, Paul and myself. But the
Two enlightened men.
Yeah, but the production was charming, I have to say, because I'd been resistant to it.
I know you resist me so often, Danny, and yet I persist. Which brings us to my bucket list.
Yeah, okay, the bucket list. Let's have it.
It's actually gotten a little longer when I thought about it. I would like very much for you to, because I want to do these all at your theater, not at other theaters. Sweeney Todd. There's a small production of Sweeney Todd that only has 7 people. And people go, oh, Sweeney Todd, it's about a guy who kills people and a woman who puts them into meat pies. It's really a love story. It's about that fine line of love and hate and love and revenge when love is taken from you and the acts of passion that you can do. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, Sondheim's best score. Every note is just brilliant. And this small version that they did downtown came from London, where they actually did it in a contemporary pie shop. And they recreated the pie shop downtown. And it was brilliant. And I thought, well, you've already got the lobby where you could sell the pies at intermission. Anyway, that's one. Another one that Danny's resisting is Little Shop of Horrors, because he's seen a lot of bad high school productions. But I lived with that show for 2 years. I did as a stage manager, I did the first production outside of New York, and it was in Boston. It played for 2 years, and then we went to Japan with it. And I've seen a Japanese production while we were there because they were taking it after us and doing their own. Avenue Q, which I think is so funny. And so, I mean, look, it's a show that has a song called Everybody's a Little Bit Racist. I mean, how appropriate is that? I would love to do All My Sons because I think it is Miller's most perfect play, even more than Death of a Salesman, in the timeliness of it, in people putting commerce before humans. I like message plays. And A Nightingale Sang, which I stage managed, and it's a charming World War II kind of you can't take it with you wackiness and sweetness. And I grew up with my parents telling me actually funny stories about post-war or post all clear moments in London. My father used to do search and recovery as an architect. And then the Falling by Dina Gent, that was the one I was telling you, is a play about a family that has an autistic a young adult living there. And it is just sweet and funny. I mean, I love when plays can do both, and really makes you think, as the blurb in the rental thing says, how do you love someone who is difficult to love? Which, is the dilemma of people with autism. I have an autistic nephew, and I would love to do that. Clybourne Park, which you and I talked about.
Yeah.
Which is, a black couple trying to get into the neighborhood, and then 20 or 25 years later, the neighborhood wants to get gentrified and wants to get rid of the black couple. And then Native Gardens, which JT, you and I, baby, we'll do it. And that is what I love about that. It's takes place in like Georgetown, in a very Brahmin WASP family, and a Latino lawyer, professional couple moves next door.
Moves in next door, yeah.
What I love is everybody. It's very funny. And everybody is racist or homophobic. And you see, it's not like, oh, the bad guys and the ethnics. It's like the ethnics have stereotypes about the white people, And while you laugh, and it is a very funny show, while you laugh, you get a message, and it gives you something to think about as you walk out. And I like that kind. I mean, there's other people that do really, out there street theater and message theater. I'm somewhere in between. I like when things are a little edgy, but ask something of the audience, but is still in their relative comfort zone. But I mean, you've done wit. I mean,
Yeah.
some real challenges, and I think, especially after being away from theater as we have been, I think when we come back, it's time to make every play that we see and produce and direct and act in as much as possible. Everyone count.
Yeah. No throwaways.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Sesame Street. We can't.
Well, that's why I want to do. That's why I want to do Avenue Q, because the Big Bird Standby is the one who came up with that. I still don't know how he didn't get sued by Henson, because the puppets are very Sesame Street. I was the production coordinator for a few years. The people there are incredible, but I wasn't able to. I went there when I was 40, and I would have needed to wait 20 years to get to do what I wanted to do there. So after a few years, I just moved on. But they're great people, and they've been doing it for 25 years since I left. So it's still wonderful whenever I see them. Very creative. A young woman who was a secretary and wanted to write is now their main writer, and really some good creative people. So that was fun.
So lastly, before we wind things up, what advice would you give to, aspiring people who want to join this crazy life of ours, who think they might want to? I found over the years, there are kind of a lot of people who are excited about the idea. They get excited about the idea of being involved in the theater and enchanted, in a sense, with that notion. But then if they get involved for like one show or something, they find out just how much work it is.
Yeah.
They kind of, okay, they just sort of fall by the wayside. Wasn't what I thought.
Yeah.
The enchantment.
Yeah, it's. I would say that it's going to be so different after we crawl out of this pandemic, for sure. But I think that you have to be willing to pay your dues. I mean, if you're in it for instant gratification, that happens. There are people that it happens to, but that's the wrong approach. And I think you have to be willing to do your homework. In an age of Google, and I've said this because I work with a lot of young casts, several when I worked with you, King of the Moon. I had 4 young actors, and I'll say to them, if I make a reference and you don't know what it is, either ask me, or if it's going to interrupt, look it up. Know the backstory. I directed a play about the Detroit riots called Detroit Blue, and I brought in all this stuff because all of the people I was working with had not been around. It was about the riots in the 60s, and it was happening around these 16-year-olds, and that's how old I was when the Newark riots happened. And I brought them in, Eye on the Prize, and all kinds of videos and all kinds of books. And one wonderful young actor, after he borrowed it, he came to me and he said, "Oh my God, Zoya, I had no idea." Because you don't always learn these things at home. Your family who might have struggled doesn't necessarily, sometimes they share it and that's all you hear about, and sometimes they don't. So you have to do a lot of homework, whether you're an actor, a director, a set designer, really dive into it. And figure out a way to have balance, whether it's a sport that you like in between or having a family. I mean, you always need something so that. I remember when I was stage managing as my first job, and there was a very bitter woman actress, and she just exuded bitterness. And I was about to get married, and she was so bitter that she said to me, "Oh, why are you doing that?" And I said, "I don't want to be a bitter old lady like you."
Ooh.
Now I am a bitter old lady like her because I'm not married. But But I mean, you have to find something that balances out your life, whether it's a place in the country, fly fishing, whatever it is, to make yourself a whole person. Because theater demands a lot, but you need to replenish it in order to do it again.
Yeah.
And I realized that people made comments. I was on the private chat, and I thought, wow, nobody had any comments, but now I'm seeing them. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we have comments. Oh, live comments?
Yeah, people just saying hi, and some of the questions we answered already. Oh, Zoe from Toronto, my nephew.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right, Sarah Ford.
Sarah Ford from Georgia and me.
Yep, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Carly, how are we doing? We got any more pictures to run through?
No, I think we've pretty much covered all of our bases for tonight. I'm really glad that you could be with us today, Zoya. What's up?
I do want to say that, in this very, very challenging time for all the arts, while you're not spending money going to the theater, spend money and send it to a theater. And the Majestic has been very loyal audience following, and they will be back. But, all the help that you can give, both psychologically helps and financially. So please support the Majestic and all the other theaters that you like.
Well, not only the theaters, but, support your kind of local businesses, your local small businesses. We've been hit really hard. And, theater is not the only one that's been hit hard. And, wear those masks, please.
Yes.
It's like so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And Carly, you're a peach. You made it so easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zoya.
Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye.
Until next time.
Don't forget,
Bye,
everyone, all of these episodes of Behind the Curtain at the Majestic are archived on our website. You can also see our children's theater production of Charlotte's Web, which is running, and all of our previous children's theater productions that we've aired are also archived, and you can dial into those. Next week, once again, my guest will be Sue DeJura, one of our actors and directors. So thanks for tuning in. Zoya, have a great night.
Thank you. You too,
Thank you.
See you soon in the better times. Bye.